Millennia ago, on the verdant world of Ire, the Protoss walked as one, bound together by a vast psychic link. They were strong, disciplined, and, at least in the eyes of Aemon, a renegade of the ancient Xel'Naga, beautiful. Aemon sought the perfect life form to end the infinite cycle of his kind. And in the Protoss, he believed he had found purity of form. He revealed himself and his faction of like-minded Xel'Naga to the Protoss. The proud warriors fell to their knees, worshipping their creators as gods. But unity withered. Individual egos blossomed, eroding the psychic bond. The Protoss turned against one another, and as the Xel'Naga abandoned them, the eon of strife began, a civil war that consumed generations. In time, the Protoss rediscovered their link. They called it the Kala, and built both a religion and a philosophy around it. The Kala was their safeguard, their bulwark against ever falling to such chaos again. Yet not all would submit. A rogue faction, the Dark Templar, refused the Kala, and for this defiance, the Conclave, the Protoss's ruling council, cast them out. Centuries later, in the year 2259, Terran colonists drifted into the Kaprulu sector, settling in the shadow of Protoss space. True to the dictates of the Dae'Ul, their philosophy of non-interference, the Protoss observed these new arrivals from afar. Yet vigilance defined them, and when Executor Tassadar of the Kaprulu Expeditionary Force uncovered Zerg probes near Terran worlds, the Protoss could no longer remain mere watchers. The Zerg were born far away, on the ash-choked world of Xeris. They began as little more than parasitic worms, yet Aemon saw them in a different perfection, purity of essence. He guided their evolution, but unlike the Protoss, he feared they too might stray. To prevent this, he created the Overmind, a vast intelligence to embody and direct the swarm. Into this being, Aemon planted a directive, binding it forever to seek out, destroy, and assimilate the Protoss, reshaping creation into Aemon's vision. The swarm thrived by consuming the genetic essence of other species. What could be assimilated was absorbed, what could not was annihilated. From Xeris, they conquered all life, even absorbing a spacefaring race and taking to the stars themselves. It was then that the Xel'Naga of Ulnar arrived, opposed to Aemon's designs. The battle that followed was apocalyptic. Aemon unleashed the swarm, and the Elnari fell. The Overmind had devoured them, consuming their knowledge. Aemon himself was cast into the void, banished, yet his directive remained. The the swarm left Xeris, its vast hunger now bent toward ire and the Protoss. As it consumed its way across the galaxy, the Overmind grew cautious. It knew the psychic might of the Protoss could overwhelm even the swarm. Worse still, it foresaw Amon's plan. Should the Protoss fall, their hybrid union with the Zerg would spell the swarm's eventual extinction. To escape this fate, the Overmind sought another species with psionic potential, one it could control. By the mid-25th century, it found its answer: humanity. The Terrans of the Koprulu sector knew nothing of this looming threat. The Zerg had already discovered them 60 years before the Great War, but the Terrans themselves would not learn of the swarm for another 50. Among the Terrans, the Confederacy stood strongest. From their capital on Tarsanis, the old families ruled with corruption and iron control, exploiting colonies and fueling unrest. The most dangerous rebellion rose on Core Hall, led by Senator Arcturus Mengsk, and with the backing of Umoja. After the Confederacy crushed the Kalmorian Combine in the Guild Wars of 2480, filling its armies with newly resocialized criminals, Core Hall declared independence. The Confederacy retaliated. Ghost operatives assassinated Senator Mengsk, leaving his son Arcturus to lead the movement. Under his command, the rebellion grew, renamed as the Sons of Core Hall. Meanwhile, the Confederacy discovered Zerg infestations on fringe worlds. They fought ruthlessly to contain them, yet secretly kept specimens for experimentation. By 2491, they had begun testing Zerg biology with psychic subjects. Among these was Sarah Kerrigan, a ghost rescued by Arcturus Mengsk, who rose to become his second in command. The Confederacy struck back hard against Core Hall, unleashing nuclear fire upon the world. But their heavy-handed tyranny only deepened resentment. The Sons of Core Hall endured, striking again and again, while the Confederacy abducted colonists and subjected them to resocialization to fill its dwindling ranks. By 2499, the Confederacy unveiled a new weapon, psi emitters. These devices projected ghost signals across interplanetary distances, luring Zerg into carefully laid traps. The plan was simple: draw the creatures in, let them devastate rivals, and then, heroically, destroy the monsters for glory and control. But their hubris called down disaster. In November, the Zerg arrived en masse at the sector's edge. The Overmind dispatched a scouting brood and soon uncovered over a dozen Terran worlds. Subtle at first, the swarm descended upon Chao Sara, spreading spores through the atmosphere, seeding creep across its surface, and raising hive clusters. Marsara, Brontes, and Dylar IV soon followed. At Chao Sara's Flanum installation, Confederate experiments spiraled out of control. Zerg overran the facility, and though the Confederacy fought them back, claiming victory from Los Angeles and suppressing all communication, the truth could not be buried. The Zerg had claimed Chow Sara. Then in December, Executor Tassadar arrived with the Koprulu Expeditionary Force. The Conclave issued a grim order: purge the world. Tassadar unleashed the Protoss' purifying fires. Every living thing on Chow Sara was scoured away. The Overmind merely watched, studying its enemy. Tassadar's orders did not end there. The Conclave demanded he cleanse every Terran world at risk of infestation, regardless of innocence. As his fleet turned toward Mar Sara, Tassadar began to question the morality of his mission. When word spread that humanity was not alone in the galaxy, that another species existed, and that they had annihilated an entire world, the reactions were as varied as they were chaotic. The Confederacy quickly imposed censorship on reports about the Protoss strike and the Sara system. Yet rumors spread anyway, racing across the stars until they reached Tarsanis itself. Universe News Network fanned the flames with sensationalist broadcasts, warning that an alien race had come to wipe out mankind. Among the people, emotions fractured: horror, religious awe, hope for peaceful contact, calls for war. Some clung to disbelief, refusing to accept the truth, even as the Confederacy itself trembled. Panic struck the economy, reversing the prosperity the Confederacy had enjoyed since its victory in the Guild Wars. Colonel Edmund Duke, fearing Mar Sara would be the Protoss' next target, hurled a reckless counterattack at Tassadar's fleet. Out of respect for the Terran's bravery, Tassadar pulled back. But in truth, it was doubt that stayed his hand. He could not bring himself to burn Mar Sara as the Conclave demanded. He retreated beyond Terran censors, determined to find another way to stop the Zerg without condemning humanity. For now, Mar Sara was spared, but with infestation spreading, no one could say for how long. The Confederacy already knew the truth. Mar Sara was infested. Outland colonies had gone silent in early December. Scouts confirmed Zerg activity the day before Chow Sara's destruction. Still, the knowledge was locked away, confined to the highest levels of government and a handful of old families. To the public, the Protoss seemed the greater threat, and Mar Sara was where this belief would be tested. While Duke tightened control of the fringe worlds, Mar Sara's new magistrate was ordered to relocate colonists into the wastelands under the guise of easing evacuation. Some cities, such as the capital, remained standing, but much of the populace was abandoned, left to the mercy of the Confederacy's propaganda. The colonists were told the Protoss had retreated out of cowardice. Yet the truth was clear to those on the ground. The Zerg were here, stalking the wilds, mutilating cattle, and closing in. Then came open war. Fighting erupted between the Confederacy and the Sons of Korhal. The Mar Sara colonial militia fended off an attack on one of their own command centers, then struck back and destroyed a rebel base. But the greater threat revealed itself soon after, when a Confederate team at Backwater Station, Marines, Firebats, and SCVs, was overrun by the Zerg. Colonial Marshal Jim Rader defied his orders to intervene. Duke told him to stand down. Rayner ignored him, leading his men to the rescue. There, amidst the chaos, they discovered something far worse, an infested command center. They destroyed it, but when reporter Michael Liberty carried news of the battle back to the public, the Confederacy moved swiftly. Rayner's militia was arrested and locked in a prison ship orbiting above the planet. The magistrate of Mar Sara saw the truth in this adjutant's reports. The Confederacy was deliberately avoiding battle with the Zerg. The Sons of Korhal, not the government, were the only ones offering any real help. The Confederacy prepared to evacuate Mar Sara, but there was unfinished business. The Sons of Korhal had stolen a mysterious box, a psi emitter. Already, the Zerg had overrun Oasis Station, drawn to the device's lure. The 417th Confederate Marine Platoon was sent to retrieve it. They succeeded, capturing both the box and a rebel operative. But their victory cost them dearly. Nearly half their number lost in the retreat. Their government then betrayed them. A tactical nuclear strike was launched to wipe them out, along with the emitter. Miraculously, they survived, taking refuge in an abandoned bunker complex known as Scenic, unaware they had been marked for death. It was the rebel prisoner who revealed the emitter's true power. The 417th understood then. Mar Sara City was doomed. But if they activated the device, they could draw the Zerg away, buying time for evacuation. With only 90 minutes to prepare, the platoon turned Scenic into a fortress. When the swarm descended, they fought to the last man. Their sacrifice delayed the horde just long enough for the dropships to reach the city. Their final stand brought salvation. Mengsk, joined now by Michael Liberty, struck an alliance with the magistrate. The militia braced for one final defense, holding the Zerg back for 30 desperate minutes until the Sons of Korhal's transports had arrived. Against all odds, the civilians escaped. Meanwhile, the Sons of Korhal freed Jim Raynor from his prison ship, bringing him into their cause. And soon after, Raynor led a strike into the Jacobs installation to steal weapons data. Marines and Firebats stormed the facility, cutting down Alpha Squadron troops and even captive Zerg, seizing the data disk before the installation self-destructed. They escaped only moments before it exploded. At Firebase Chimera, The Zerg struck again. This time, Executor Tassadar himself led Protoss forces to the surface, aiding the battered Terrans against the swarm. Yet even with their combined strength, Mar Sara could not be saved. The Sons of Korhal fled to Antigua Prime. 13 hours later, the Protoss returned. Tassadar carried out the Conclave's will. In a storm of purifying fire, Mar Sara was scoured of all life. After the fires of Mar Sara were extinguished, the Sons of Korhal struck again. Their fleet clashed with General Edmund Duke's forces in the Battle of Brontes, a brutal fleet skirmish that left behind a drifting graveyard of shattered warships and burning wreckage. From there, Arcturus Mengsk turned his eyes to Antigua Prime. On its second moon, the Sons of Korhal moved to support a colonial revolt. The Confederacy was ready, seizing the Antiguan command center and securing the nearby road. But the rebels soon discovered they were not the only outsiders on Antigua. Zerg had infiltrated the shadows. Mengsk dispatched Lieutenant Sarah Kerrigan, Captain Jim Rayner, and renegade reporter Michael Liberty, backed by additional troops. Rayner's men smashed the defensive structures, clearing the way for Kerrigan. Slipping inside, she slaughtered Alpha Squadron soldiers with ruthless efficiency. Liberty followed, capturing the moment as Kerrigan assassinated the Confederate officer in command. His report soon became a weapon of propaganda for Mengsk. Alpha Squadron struck back, sending a counterattack against the rebels and their Antiguan allies. The coalition not only repelled them, but destroyed the nearby Confederate base, throwing Duke's forces into chaos. In the confusion, Zerg descended. Their assault crippled Alpha Squadron's flagship, the NORAD-2, sending it plummeting to the surface. Desperate, Duke called for aid. Mengsk, seizing the moment, ordered Rayner to lead the rescue. Sons of Korhal forces linked with Alpha Squadron remnants, together breaking through the swarms to free the stranded general. It was here Mengsk made his move. He persuaded Duke to defect. The Sons of Korhal had gained not only a powerful fleet, but also one of the Confederacy's most prominent generals. The Confederacy retaliated with a massive blockade of Antigua Prime. Colonial fleet and army elements sealed the planet, while propaganda poisoned the airwaves. The rebels, they claimed, drugged Antiguan colonists and even Alpha Squadron soldiers into obedience. Duke was portrayed as a brainwashed husk, paraded as Mengsk's puppet. Confederates painted the Sons of Korhal as allies of Protoss and Zerg, conspiring to enslave mankind. The blockade, they promised, would crush rebellion swiftly. Meanwhile, Mengsk's propaganda pushed the opposite, that the Zerg were the Confederacy's own weapon. As the war ground on, the Sons of Korhal integrated Alpha Squadron into their ranks, reshaping their organization around it. Still, the stalemate dragged until breakthroughs came in blood. The old families, shaken by a duke's defection, began quietly evacuating their children from Tarsonis to Triador 9, hidden as vacations but meant as escape routes should the Confederacy fall. Meanwhile, the Zerg spread chaos wherever they went. Their invasion brought the rebel group known as the Fist of Redemption to Brontes 4, where the Civilian Council of Inquiry raised the Hammer Strike Force to stop them. Confederate ghosts provided support, but the government's heavy-handed crackdowns only sparked more unrest. The new Dresden outlaws rose in revolt, adding to the chaos. The Zerg followed in force, bringing with them the Incubus and Bahamut broods. Soon after, Tassadar's 7th Fleet arrived. The Protoss, for once, refrained from purging the world outright, choosing instead to fight the Zerg and Terrans conventionally. But infighting among the Protoss weakened their campaign, and worse still, renegade ghost Atticus Carpenter seized control of both Zerg broods, turning them into allies of the Fist of Redemption. The Fenris brood soon joined the conflict, and even when Terrans and Protoss tried to form a belated alliance, it was too late. Brontes 4 fell beneath the swarm. As the war dragged on, its rhythm grew grimly predictable. Mengsk's propaganda fanned rebellion after rebellion. The Confederacy tightened its grip. Humanity bled itself into civil war, too consumed with fighting one another to resist infestation. By the time the Zerg arrived, resistance was scattered and unprepared. The Protoss alone had the strength to scour the infection, but their cleansing came at the cost of every world they touched. During one clash with Delta Squadron, the Sons of Kor Hall unveiled a new weapon, a psi emitter, reverse-engineered from Confederate technology stolen at Jacob's installation. Sarah Kerrigan was tasked with deploying it deep in a Confederate base. Despite Zerg interference, she succeeded. The device's pull was irresistible. Zerg swarmed across light years, converging on Antigua Prime in a tide of destruction. Confederate positions crumbled, the blockade shattered. The Sons of Kor Hall escaped the noose. Protoss forces intervened briefly, even aiding Raynor in rescuing colonists. But their mercy was fleeting. Tassadar's forces soon enacted judgment, purifying Antigua Prime of all life. The Confederacy twisted the loss into narrative. Mengsk, they claimed, had bargained with aliens, only to be betrayed. Citizens were urged to enlist as fleets repositioned to Halcyon, a staging point between Antigua and Tarsonis. The Sons of Kor Hall pressed on. On the gas giant G-2275's moon, Kerrigan, Raynor, and Liberty led a strike on a Confederate facility. They annihilated defenses, seized upgraded Goliath walkers, and crippled a vital technological hub, denying the Confederacy both its designs and its weapons. On Orna 3, Another strike freed tortured test subjects and sympathetic scientists. Disguised as captives, Rayner and Kerrigan infiltrated, broke the prisoners out, and destroyed the base with demolition charges. The Confederacy's grip faltered. Victory after victory emboldened Mengsk. Some, like Tarsanis bureaucrat Tamsin Cawley, became convinced Mengsk's triumph was inevitable, unless he were killed. Cawley unleashed the War Pigs, a band of criminals turned Confederate operatives upon the rebels. They failed to kill Mengsk at Atticus Minor and barely escaped Confederate pursuit. Realizing Mengsk's rise was unstoppable, Cawley sought to cover his betrayal by turning on the War Pigs themselves. His scheme collapsed, and the mercenaries escaped his grasp. The revolution of Antigua Prime had turned the tide. Alpha Squadron's defection gave Mengsk credibility. The psi emitters proved devastating. Now, he set his sights on Tarsanis itself. Confederate officials trusted in their formidable orbital defenses. Duke knew better. He had fought over Tarsanis more than 30 times. From the bridge of the NORAD II, he led the Sons of Korhal through weak points in its defenses, Delta and Omega squadrons collapsing before his advance. Kerrigan and Rayner spearheaded assaults on the surface, dismantling Nova, Delta, and Omega squadron factories. Reinforced by Duke's forces and their own psi emitters, they fought Confederate General Ledbetter's defenses to a bloody standstill. Battles raged even in the streets of Tarsanis City. The psi emitters did their work. The Zerg came. Confederate and Rebel alike were overwhelmed. Tacidar's Protoss arrived, intent on battling the Swarm, but soon clashed with both Zerg and Terrans. Arcturus Mengsk saw an opportunity in the chaos. Terrified that Confederate leaders might escape, he ordered Sarah Kerrigan to defend the Zerg hives at New Gettysburg against the Protoss. She and Rayner objected, but Mengsk insisted. The result was carnage, a four-way struggle of rebels, Confederates, Zerg, and Protoss. Kerrigan's forces drove the Protoss back, only to be drowned by the Zerg. She called for extraction. No reinforcements came. Mengsk had abandoned her. Jim Rayner, horrified, defied orders, stealing a dropship with Michael Liberty. They scoured the battlefield, but Kerrigan was gone. Their dropship fled to the battlecruiser Thunderchild, a sanctuary for refugees, before breaking orbit. Meanwhile, Mengsk exploited the chaos to secure key assets. Media Magnet, Handy Anderson, the Annihilators, and powerful ghost Nova Terra among them. Confederate resistance forces slipped away amidst the slaughter. The Zerg secured their prize, Sarah Kerrigan, and withdrew to Char. The Confederacy, once a galactic power, was shattered, and Tarsanis had fallen. The destruction of Tarsanis shattered the Confederacy. In the aftermath, most surviving Confederates threw in with the Sons of Korhal, including the remaining Confederate squadrons conscripted by force, handing the former rebels outright military supremacy. Mengsk's organization rescued countless Terran lives, but it would not impose itself where it was unwelcome. As Mengsk declared, each world's local government held ultimate authority over its own soil. Many survivors were ferried to Ursa. Ursa became a battlefield the moment terraformers, surveyors, and soldiers set down. Zerg descended, and John Dyer waged the campaign virtually alone. After killing his own men when he believed they'd been infested. During this tumult, Raynor's raiders launched a daring strike on the Dylarian shipyards to steal enough vessels to escape Mengsk's shadow. Mengsk sent General Edmund Duke and the flagship Hyperion to stop them, but the raiders prevailed. They stole the Hyperion and a slate of other ships, leaving Duke alive, tied and humiliated. Mengsk's would-be government suffered a defeat before it could even be proclaimed, and yet he proclaimed it anyway. Arcturus Mengsk announced the Terran Dominion, a new government to watch over the worlds asking for help. He promised victory over the aliens. For the first time, every Terran colony in the Kaprulu sector stood united beneath a single sovereign. Mengsk's rule even encompassed the Kelmorian Combine. The newborn Dominion Marine Corps kept fighting the Zerg. Meanwhile, the Zerg carried Sarah Kerrigan to Char. From there, she reached out through the dark, psionically, contacting both Jim Raynor and Arcturus Mengsk, revealing her location. Kerrigan's psionic emanations pulled Mengsk's gaze to Char. He sent General Duke and Alpha Squadron to retrieve her and root out the swarm. They were beaten back. Soon after, Raynor's raiders landed, carving a path to her location, only for Kerrigan to emerge from a chrysalis as the Queen of Blades. Broken but alive, the raiders were allowed to withdraw. While the raiders regrouped on Char's surface, Kerrigan led infiltrations against both Alpha Squadron and the raider ships, forcing their flagships to flee. She boarded the science vessel Amerigo to plunder data on the Ghost program. Protoss under Tassadar, tracking the same psionic beacon, struck at the remaining infested ships of both sides. Amid the chaos, Raynor allied with Tassadar and Zeratul, the Dark Templar prelate who had assassinated Zaz, Cerebrates of the Garm Brood. Zaz's death threw the swarm into a frenzy. They annihilated the now renegade Garm Brood and destroyed the primary Protoss ships, though they were just illusory decoys. But when Zeratul killed Zaz, he brushed minds with the Overmind, inadvertently revealing Ire's location. The swarm launched at once. They smashed the vanguard of Ire, seized a Kardarian crystal, and used it to psychically anchor the Overmind upon Ire itself. Judicator Aldaris took command of the defense with Praetor Phoenix, and a new executor, Arcturus. Phoenix found himself stranded at an unpowered outpost in Antioch. The Executor's relief force broke free and won the ground. From Char, Tassadar reached Aldaris and Arcturus via Zeratul's psychic aid, explaining the Cerebrite's control over the swarm. Aldaris doubted. Phoenix listened. Phoenix led a Reaver strike on the local Cerebrite, while Arcturus pinned Zerg defenses. The Cerebrite fell and resurrected moments later. Aldaris then ordered an assault on the hive clusters at Sion. The Executor prevailed there, but Phoenix's detachment at Antioch was overrun, and Phoenix was believed fallen. Convinced Tassadar's pact with the Dark Templar imperiled Ire more than the Zerg, Aldaris dispatched a force to Char to seize him. The alliance of Tassadar, Zeratul, and Raynor struck back through cunning. Exploiting the lingering psychic tie between Raynor and Kerrigan, they lured the Queen of Blades into a trap. Channeled through newfound Dark Templar mastery, Tassadar personally slew Kerrigan's Cerebrate, severing her clean control of the swarm. She nonetheless rallied fragments and challenged the Protoss and Terrans. In the ensuing confrontation, she instantly removed Raynor from the fight and bested the Protoss leaders in single combat, only for Protoss reinforcements to arrive, prompting Zeratul to vanish into the shadows. Those reinforcements had come to arrest Tassadar. He convinced the Executor to forego the arrest and help find Zeratul and the Dark Templar instead. Tracing Zeratul to a Terran installation on Char, Tassadar fought through Zerg lines and Alpha Squadron remnants, and breached the facility with a small strike team, allied with the Terrans inside, and freed Zeratul, who pledged his blades to save Ire. The roots of the Protoss Civil War lay in the Eon of Strife. When severed from their psychic union, Protoss descended into slaughter until the Ka'ala had restored order. Another seed was sown a millennium before the Great War, when rogue tribes severed themselves deliberately from the Ka'ala. Conclave leader Cortanul ordered Executor Aiden to capture and execute them, and Aiden hid instead. Exile followed. Dark Templar became heresy. The Civil War ignited when Tassadar brought the Dark Templar, the only warrior who could truly kill Cerebrates, home to Ire. The vanguard of Ire, led by the Conclave, attacked, seeking to arrest Tassadar and Arcturus. Protoss rebels shattered the Conclave's defenses and destroyed the heart of the Conclave, killing many of its members and beginning the end of Protoss governance as it had been. Horrified by Protoss killing Protoss, Tassadar surrendered. Aldaris arrested him. Zeratul and the Dark Templar vanished. Phoenix led what remained. The Conclave placed Tassadar in stasis pending trial. Fearing execution, Phoenix plotted a rescue. Jim Raynor, commanding the Hyperion, joined, repaying Tassadar for saving him on Char. Zeratul revealed what he had learned on Char. The Zerg were Xel'Naga creations. The Overmind sought to perfect life itself. Stopping it was imperative, not only for Ire, but for countless worlds. Phoenix and Zeradol set out to thin the Overmind's guard by assassinating 2 Cerebrates. Zeratul personally slew them both. Tassadar rallied his scattered forces. Raynor's raiders pledged themselves, and together, Protoss and Terrans marched. They plunged into the Hive cluster. The Tiamat and Jormungand broods fought like leviathans, but Tassadar's host reached the Overmind and cracked its armored shell. Losses mounted. The attack faltered, and the Overmind gathered itself to escape. Meanwhile, at the trial site, defended by Ara and Furinak's tribe forces, Phoenix and Raynor forced a breach and freed Tassadar. Aldaris arrived with a small fleet to stop them, only to be ambushed by Zeratul and the Dark Templar. Rhetoric flared. A secondary battle erupted. Its resolution came in the final assault, when even the Conclave conceded Tassadar had been right. Seeing the peril, Tassadar chose sacrifice. He would channel both the Void and the Kala through his flagship carrier, the Ganathror, and hurl that union as a spear. Mutalisks raked the hull, but could not turn it. A warp rift opened over the Overmind. The Ganathror's unleashed energy struck. The Overmind died. The remnants of its vast flesh were dragged into the rift as it sealed. In the Overmind's deathwake, the swarm ran wild. 70% of Ire's Protoss perished. Continents were scoured. Jungles turned to ash and wreckage and corpses. Non-Zerg life vanished from whole regions. Leaderless, the Zerg split. One faction rallied to Sarah Kerrigan, her swarm. Another gathered under Cerebrit Dagoth, and a newborn second Overmind. And thus, the Brood War had begun.